Lebanon, a land famous for its majestic cedars, a symbol of strength and longevity, has made its mark in the Bible, not only through its natural beauty, but also through its powerful prophecies of God. But did you know that behind the majestic images of mountains and lush forests lie profound prophetic messages that reveal the future of this land? These prophecies speak not only of judgment, but also of promises of restoration and hope, a powerful testament to God's love and faithfulness to all nations. From warnings of the decline of ancient empires to promises of rebirth and peace, the lessons of Lebanon in the Bible paint a comprehensive picture of God's plan for humanity. Let's explore those wonders to better understand the power of God and realize that through these prophecies, He always calls people to return to repentance, redemption, and hope in Him. Number 1. Beirut, Judgment and Hope in God's Plan. Beirut, once known as the Phoenix City, is a living example of destruction and rebirth, a symbol of significance in history and God's prophetic picture. Over the centuries, Beirut has experienced countless collapses and restorations. The stories of this city are reminiscent of the cycles often mentioned in the Bible, moments of judgment, trials, and finally hope in reconstruction. Beirut's history is full of tragic events. From the time of the Roman Empire, where a terrible earthquake in 551 AD destroyed much of the city, to the Crusades and the Mamluk occupation, Beirut has faced countless conflicts and destruction. The suffering did not stop there. The Lebanese Civil War, which lasted from 1975 to 1990, left deep wounds, leaving Beirut a divided, devastated city. And most recently, the Beirut port explosion in 2020 shook the world, reminding humanity of the fragility of life and the disasters that can strike without warning. Yet, through all its devastation, Beirut has never stopped being reborn. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, the city has become a symbol of resilience and an unyielding spirit. Beirut's history is reminiscent of the sacred cycles mentioned in the Bible. The number 7, a number with unique spiritual significance in the Bible, is evident in the story of Beirut. In Genesis, God completed the work of creation in 6 days and rested on the 7th day. This day not only symbolizes completeness, but also emphasizes the completion of God's plan. In the book of Revelation, the number 7 appears repeatedly, from the 7 churches, the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, to the 7 bowl judgments, all of which symbolize the completeness of God's plan. Beirut's history seems to reflect this spiritual significance. The city has gone through 7 major cycles of destruction, from the earthquake under the Romans to the port explosion in 2020. These events not only mark periods of pain, but are also reminders that judgment always comes with the opportunity for renewal. For Christians, this is a vivid demonstration that even in the darkest moments, God's plan is still at work. Beirut's story also recalls the historical cycle of Israel, a people God chose to bring light to the world, but also subjected to repeated exiles and judgments. From the Babylonian exile to the restoration under Nehemiah and Ezra, Israel has gone through cycles of trials, but has always been led back by God. In some ways, Beirut reflects the perseverance and hope in God's plan. This is not to say that Beirut's suffering is simply part of the course of history. Instead, it shows how God uses trials to shape and guide nations, and even humanity, back to Him. Each of Beirut's destructions is a stark reminder of human fragility, but each of the city's rebirths is a testament to the power of hope and God's mercy. The Beirut port explosion of 2020 left untold pain, but it also highlighted one thing: when everything around us falls apart, people can find strength in God. The rebuilding of Beirut is not just a physical restoration, but also a spiritual awakening. In the most challenging moments, the reminder of God's presence always resonates powerfully. As God says in Isaiah 41:10, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen, help and uphold you with my righteous right hand." Beirut's journey also holds profound lessons for all, especially Christians. In life, no one is immune to moments of trial and destruction, but those trials are not the end. Instead, they open up opportunities to return to God, seek Him, and receive His restoration. With all its collapses and rebirths, the city of Beirut is a reminder that all hardships can be overcome when we put our faith in God. The resilience of Beirut is also a powerful call to believers. We are called to witness rebirth and be part of the renewal, bringing God's love and light to places in darkness. As we walk in faith, just as the ruined stones of Beirut were rebuilt into a new city, we too can become instruments for God's restoration of this world. Beirut is not only a city with a rich history, but also a prophetic symbol, reminding us of God's judgment and mercy. The city's cycles of destruction and rebirth are living testimony that, even in the darkest of times, hope exists. In God's divine plan, nothing is meaningless. Every trial, every loss, is an opportunity for us to see more clearly His love and power. Beirut has been, is, and will continue to be a powerful testament that, when we trust in God, rebirth is not just a possibility, but a sure promise. Number 2. Lessons from the cedar tree: resilience and humility. Lebanon is a land not only famous for its natural beauty, but also for the spiritual values it brings. Lebanon is an integral part of God's stories and prophecies in the Bible. One of the prominent symbols coming from this land is the cedar tree, an image that appears throughout the spiritual lessons and history of the Bible. The cedar of Lebanon is impressive not only for its substantial height, but also for its durability and ability to withstand time. In the ancient world, cedar wood was one of the most precious materials, often used to build substantial structures, from palaces to temples. The cedar tree is not only a precious natural resource, but also a symbol of solidity, resilience, and holiness. We can see one of the important uses of cedar in the construction of King Solomon's temple, as recorded in 1 Kings 5:6 and 1 Kings 6:9 and 10. King Solomon cooperated with King Hiram of Tyre to bring cedar wood from Lebanon to build the Holy Temple. The temple was not only a physical structure, but also a symbol of a strong relationship between God and His people. Cedar trees played an essential role in construction projects and were also used in purification rituals. In Leviticus 14:04-7, cedar wood was used for purification, helping people maintain purity and chastity in their relationship with God. Therefore, the cedar tree became a symbol of purity, of the fear of God, and of holiness in the life of faith. However, the cedar tree does not only bring images of endurance and resilience. In the Bible, the cedar tree is also used to illustrate an important lesson about human pride and self-exaltation. In Isaiah 2:12-13, God warns that the tall cedars will be brought low. This is a powerful reminder that no matter how great one's material achievements or power, all will face God's righteous judgment. No matter how strong, the tall cedars cannot escape destruction unless they humble themselves before God. Pride itself, no matter how great and powerful it may appear, will inevitably fall unless it humbles itself before God's righteousness. This is an essential lesson for everyone, from individuals to nations. So how can we apply the lesson of the cedar tree to our lives? The cedar tree teaches us about resilience, perseverance, and the power of faith. In today's challenging world, every believer must stand strong, be resilient, and live a life of unshakable faith. Just as the cedar tree can survive the harshest conditions, the righteous will always be protected and strengthened by the power and grace of God. The cedar tree also reminds us of the dangers of pride. We may experience great success in life, but that success cannot make us forget the need to live humbly before God. The warnings in the Bible about the fall of the great cedar trees are a reminder not only to individuals, but also to nations. All the world's greatness will have to stand before the righteous judgment of God. The lessons of the cedar tree are not limited to historical stories in the Bible, but also invaluable lessons for us in modern life. The cedar tree is a symbol of perseverance, vigorous growth, and steadfastness of faith. God wants to remind us of the resilience and power of faith, and through familiar images like the cedar tree, He also wants to show us His commitment to using nature and history to lead people to redemption. Look at your life in the light of God's love and justice. Just as the cedar tree thrives amid trials, each of us is called to be steadfast in faith, humble, and remember that all greatness must face the righteous judgment of God. The cedar tree's resilience is not only a lesson in perseverance in faith, but also a reminder of the importance of humility. God always gives us the strength to overcome every challenge, but we must remain humble and recognize that everything is by His grace. The cedar tree's reminder calls for us to live in the resilience of faith, always remembering that true greatness comes when we humble ourselves before God. Let the cedar tree be a living image of the resilience, holiness, and humility we need to live according to God's will. Number 3. Pride and Judgment. Lessons from Tyre and Sidon. In the pages of the Bible, we find stories of ancient cities where wealth and power were not the only factors that determined their fate. Tyre and Sidon, two cities on the Mediterranean coast, are prime examples of God's pride and judgment on nations that forgot Him in their prosperity. Through powerful prophecies, God warned these cities, and through them, we learn profound lessons about His justice and sovereignty. Tyre and Sidon, economic powerhouses. Tyre, the most powerful city in the Phoenician civilization, built a powerful trading empire with a system of ports and trade routes that stretched across the Mediterranean. It was a place that produced precious goods such as seafood and especially purple dye from seashells. Honestly, the trade of crocodiles and other reptiles was carried on in the ancient world. With these advantages, Tyre symbolized prosperity, power, and influence. Although not as advantageous as Tyre in terms of sea routes, Sidon was famous for its glass production and metalworking. Both cities, with their great development and superior power, became the economic powerhouses of the land. However, this prosperity became a double-edged sword, as it fostered arrogance and complacency in the hearts of their leaders. Pride and God's judgment. With continued prosperity, the people of Tyre and Sidon became arrogant and complacent, especially Tyre, whose king declared that he was a god. "I am a god. I sit on a throne like a god," the king said in self-satisfaction. But God, the creator of all things, could not let man forget his place in the universe. In Ezekiel 28, God judges the ruler of Tyre for his arrogance and declares him to be a mere man, not a god. "You have said, 'I am a god. I sit on a throne like a god.' You are in the heart of the sea, yet you are a man, not a god. Although you have the understanding of a god, you are only a man," God says through the prophet Ezekiel. This judgment is a strong warning not only to Tyre, but to all who are arrogant and self-important without realizing their dependence on God. God declares that Tyre will be destroyed by foreign nations and will become a desolate place. These prophecies are not only a warning, but also a prediction of the fate of a mighty empire, a prophecy that has been accurately fulfilled through historical events. Judgment on Tyre, the inevitable fall. In Ezekiel 26, God describes in detail the fall of Tyre, using powerful language to describe the city as being worn down to a bare rock. These images not only reflect the devastation of Tyre, but also serve as a clear warning to nations who put their trust in their strength rather than in God. The fall of Tyre was fulfilled in history. Tyre was besieged twice, first by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC and second by Alexander the Great in 332 BC. Although Nebuchadnezzar caused the devastation, it was Alexander who indeed destroyed Tyre. He not only destroyed the city, but also built a road from the mainland to the island of Tyre, fulfilling the prophecy of the city's total fall. This scene shows that God's prophecies are not just empty words, but events that can be fulfilled accurately. Tyre, a proud city, was eventually destroyed as God had foretold. Sidon, judgment is not escaped. Sidon, the city that faced God's judgment for its sins and pride, did not escape destruction. Ezekiel 28:22-23 records God's judgment on Sidon. "I will make you know that I am the Lord, when I execute judgment on you, and I will display my glory in you." Although Sidon was not destroyed as completely as Tyre, God's judgment showed that He always acts to demonstrate His power and justice. Through this judgment, God wanted people to recognize His greatness and sovereignty, as well as warn that no one can resist Him without suffering the consequences. Lessons from God's judgment. The story of Tyre and Sidon is a lesson about pride and the price we pay when we forget our place before God. Through destroying these two cities, God reminds us that prosperity without fear and honoring Him will only be a trap that leads to our downfall. The prophecy of the fall of Tyre and Sidon is also a testament to God's justice. He is no respecter of persons, and those who are proud and rebel against Him will pay the price. However, through His judgment, all will recognize that He is Jehovah, the mighty and just God. We who believe in God need to learn from these lessons. Prosperity is not a sign of God's approval, but an opportunity for us to honor Him in all things. Remember, When we recognize pride in our hearts, we need to turn to God, to seek His forgiveness and guidance. God's judgment is not something that only exists in the past. It continues to be a part of our lives today. Therefore, let us live in fear and honor of Him, to avoid falling into the trap of pride, and to realize that all power belongs to Him, the Most High. Number 4. Prophecy and the conflict involving Lebanon. In the context of modern geopolitical tensions, the country of Lebanon is playing a unique role in the conflicts with Israel. These events not only reflect changes in international relations, but also cause many to view them through the prism of biblical prophecy. One of the key factors in these modern conflicts is Hezbollah, the political armed group that has become a significant force in Lebanon. Hezbollah, although considered a terrorist group by some countries, receives strong support from Iran and Syria and has become a major threat to Israel. The relationship between Hezbollah and significant countries in the region, especially Iran, increases tensions not only between Israel and Lebanon, but also between Western powers and Muslim countries. This conflict can be seen as part of the larger picture of prophetic events in the Bible, especially in the Psalms 83. Psalm 83 describes a coalition of nations that will unite against Israel in the last days. One of the nations that may be involved in this coalition is Lebanon, where Hezbollah plays a key role. The Bible speaks of a coalition of nations that wants to destroy Israel, and the presence of Hezbollah, with support from Iran and Syria, can be seen as part of this coalition. In addition to Psalm 83, the prophecy in Ezekiel 38 also speaks of a more significant conflict, involving nations such as Magog, Gog, and neighboring countries that will attack Israel in the last days. Although in the modern context we cannot determine exactly which nations will be involved in this conflict, many scholars believe that Lebanon's strategic location, as well as Hezbollah's involvement, may be a clear indication that future events are coming to pass. Lebanon's geographic location has made it a flashpoint in conflicts. Located in the heart of the Middle East, Lebanon has a complicated historical relationship with Israel, and Hezbollah's involvement only adds to the tensions. Hezbollah's presence in Lebanon and its close ties to countries like Iran and Syria make Lebanon one of the countries that could be involved in a more significant conflict, as described in biblical prophecies. The current tensions between Israel and the Lebanese armed forces, especially Hezbollah, are not just a conventional political or military conflict, but also reflect a larger prophetic perspective. For many Christians, these events are not just geopolitical conflicts, but clear signs of the fulfillment of biblical prophecies. Countries like Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah are increasingly playing a larger role in the confrontation with Israel, something the Bible has long warned about. While it is impossible to know how this conflict's elements will play out, what is happening in Lebanon and the wider Middle East region may be an essential part of God's plan, as described in the prophecies. No matter how the world changes, Christians believe that these events will ultimately lead to God's restoration and ultimate victory over all of His enemies. With the growing involvement of Hezbollah and the continued tensions between nations in the region, especially with Israel, we can see that biblical prophecies are coming true. The fulfillment of these prophecies is not only a warning sign for believers in God, but also a reminder of the importance of standing firm in the faith and preparing for what is to come. Ultimately, when looking at these modern conflicts, those who believe in Bible prophecy can sense the truth that events are not random, but part of a grand plan that God has in store. Nations like Lebanon, Syria, and Iran are slowly forming the alliances that the Bible foretold, and these events will lead to a final war where God's intervention will bring salvation and victory to His faithful people. Number 5. The promise of redemption and the restoration of Lebanon. In the Bible, Lebanon is not only a land known for its majestic cedar forests, but also a nation deeply affected by historical upheavals and God's prophecies. Lebanon has endured many trials, but its prophecies of restoration offer hope for a brighter future. This transformation is not just a physical restoration, but also a spiritual and moral rebirth, reflecting God's infinite mercy. The transformation from desolation to prosperity. The prophecy in Isaiah 29:17, "In a few days Lebanon shall become a fruitful garden, and a fruitful garden shall be regarded as a forest," is a promise of Lebanon's miraculous restoration. During Isaiah's time, Lebanon was famous for its cedar forests, but it had also suffered devastation due to the wrong decisions of surrounding nations. This prophecy not only referred to material restoration, but also predicted a time of spiritual prosperity and peace under God's rule. As Lebanon underwent this transformation, it became not only a land of prosperity, but also a picture of a reborn people and nation. God was not concerned only with the material prosperity of the land, but He wanted this nation, like all nations, to return to truth and faith, and to be imbued with His love and grace. Gathering God's people, in Zechariah 10:10, God promised to bring them back from the land of Egypt, and from Assyria I will gather them. I will bring them to Gilead and Lebanon, and there will be no place for them. This is a prophecy of the return of the Israelites from their exile, and Lebanon is part of this restoration plan. This not only speaks of the rebirth of the nation of Israel, but also of the important role Lebanon will play in God's grand plan. As God gathers His people, Lebanon will not only be restored physically, but will also become a place where the nations can find peace and harmony. This return is a reminder that, no matter what hardships a nation may go through, God has a plan for restoration and redemption for all peoples, even those that have been considered remote and forgotten. The Messianic Age and the promise of redemption. In the Bible, the Messianic Age is a time of peace and justice, when Christ returns to bring about the final restoration of the peoples and nations of the world. This is when all suffering will end, and a new world without war or injustice will be born. Lebanon, like other nations, will experience this restoration. In the Messianic Age, Lebanon will not only be reborn physically, still it will also become a spiritually prosperous nation, in harmony with God and participating in His universal plan of redemption. This demonstrates God's mercy toward all peoples and nations, regardless of their past or sins. God promises that no one will be left out, and that every country will have the opportunity to participate in the universal restoration He is bringing about. Global inclusion and restoration. The promise of restoration is not just for Israel or Lebanon, but for all the world's nations. God, in His infinite mercy, desires to restore all peoples, no matter what trials or sins they have experienced. Despite its history of hardship and challenge, Lebanon will be restored and become an essential part of God's kingdom. In this restoration, every nation will become part of the grand plan God has for mankind. This promise is not just a physical restoration, but also a spiritual and moral rebirth. God will redeem the nations and help them realize the deeper meaning of their lives and mission in His universal plan. Every country, every people can return to God, find forgiveness, and live in the peace that He brings. Lebanon is not only a land rich in history and culture, but also contains amazing biblical prophecies. Majestic mountains, ancient cedar trees, and historical events are all mentioned with spiritual significance. Through these prophecies, we not only see revelations of things that have happened, but also learn profound lessons about faithfulness, rebirth, and God's excellent plan for humanity. Lebanon teaches us that even through difficult times, God's will always leads to restoration. Prophecies of judgment are stern warnings about sin and pride, but also offer hope for salvation and reconciliation. God reminds us to put our trust in Him, for He is the one who turns ashes into glory and brings light to the darkest places. We can see Lebanon's connection between the past, present, and future. The lessons from this land are a powerful reminder that each of us can be a part of God's plan of redemption. Let these prophecies inspire us, strengthen our faith, and guide us to a life of obedience and devotion. If you want to continue exploring spiritual lessons and gain a deeper understanding of Bible prophecy, follow and subscribe to our channel. Let's explore, dig deeper, and share the wonderful messages from God's Word together. This invitation is not just to learn, but to walk with us on our faith journey. Global inclusion and restoration. The promise of restoration is not just for Israel or Lebanon, but for all the world's nations. God, in His infinite mercy, desires to restore all peoples, no matter what trials or sins they have experienced. Despite its history of hardship and challenge, Lebanon will be restored and become an essential part of God's kingdom. It is in this restoration that every nation will become part of the grand plan that God has for mankind. This promise is not just a physical restoration, but also a spiritual and moral rebirth. God will redeem the nations and help them realize the deeper meaning of their lives and mission in His universal plan. Every country, every people can return to God, find forgiveness, and live in the peace that He brings. Lebanon is not only a land rich in history and culture, but also contains amazing biblical prophecies. Majestic mountains, ancient cedar trees, and historical events are all mentioned with spiritual significance. Through these prophecies, we not only see revelations of things that have happened, but also learn profound lessons about faithfulness, rebirth, and God's excellent plan for humanity. Lebanon teaches us that even through difficult times, God's will always leads to restoration. Prophecies of judgment are stern warnings about sin and pride, but also offer hope for salvation and reconciliation. God reminds us to put our trust in Him, for He is the one who turns ashes into glory and brings light to the darkest places. We can see Lebanon's connection between the past, present, and future. The lessons from this land are a powerful reminder that each of us can be a part of God's plan of redemption. Let these prophecies inspire us, strengthen our faith, and guide us to a life of obedience and devotion. If you want to continue exploring spiritual lessons and gain a deeper understanding of Bible prophecy, follow and subscribe to our channel. Let's explore, dig deeper, and share the wonderful messages from God's Word together. This invitation is not just to learn, but to walk with us on our faith journey.